Hello, 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 hello. Every day I seem to have a different hello for you. So that was today's hello. Today we're going to look at my progress of computing 4 million digits, the MRB constant. Skip to the end if all you want to hear is the present progress. I'm going to include a review of a very lengthy message which most of you that visit come from according to YouTube analytics. Thank you all for visiting from Wolfram Community. This is a very long message. Um, I worked on it for over 5 years, or about 5 years, one or the other. And when I post updates for 5 years continuously, it tends to get long and rambling. So I understand if you can't read through the whole thing. So I'm going to spend about half an hour or 45 minutes summarizing it. Maybe less than that, we'll see. Summarizing it so that you can get a good feel for the whole thing without having to read all my ramblings. Okay, starts out with Wolfram Community. There's a picture of me several years ago. Let's see if I can get this where I can scroll. Yeah, I can scroll. Um, that was me several years ago in my fancy clothes. I used to be a fashion nut. I still would be if I could find clothes to fit me that are fashionable. I guess there are, but they cost too much. Um, I invest in my computers nowadays instead of my clothes. Still more than I should, but at least I get enjoyment. I got enjoyment out of my fashion nut days, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of my computer nut days nowadays. Okay, as you probably already know, if you're viewing this video, you're probably from Wolfram Community. The present views is 80,292. Okay, there's my little map, but it's outdated. So just read it at your leisure. Now, first of all, I mentioned the MKB constant calculations. MKB is the integral analog of the MRB constant. The MRB constant is the sum. Let's see, where do I have it at defined? The MRB constant is the sum of negative 1 to the power of n times n to the 1 over n minus 1. Now, the MKB constant here is defined right here. I don't want to butcher um, the author's fine text here. Just look at it. I'll try to summarize it. The right-hand side of the equation anyway, or the middle one. The integral, it is the integral of negative 1 to the x times the x root of x from 1 to the largest even number. I guess is a good way to look at it. He says, why even number, you might ask? Because if you go to an odd number, a large odd number, right here, the absolute value of M1, which he calls the MKB constant, is close to the MRB constant plus 1/2. That's notable. Change the upper limit to 2n plus 1 to the largest odd number, M1, or the MKB constant, increases by 2I over pi. So the real part stays the same, but the imaginary part increases by 2I over pi. That's important if you're trying to compute many digits and exploring it. just um, a trivial note if you're just passing through casually. Here's my M1 or MKB can written as the integral of a power of E, I found out. So it's the integral of this power of E, e to the log x over x plus I pi x. The limit as n goes to infinity to the largest even, to the largest n, or to 2n. I don't know how else to describe it, except to the largest even number that there is. So anyway, you can review that at your leisure. That's from a link in the Beat These MRB Constant Records, where it says calculate the digits of the MKB constant. Calculating the digits of the MKB constant. Okay. I mentioned here that some people like to compute many digits of constants. Some people dislike it. Well, the human mind works differently in different people. In my last video, Untitled 10, we saw the math world definition of the MRB constant. He had a list of equations where S, or the upper limit of the partial sums of -1 to the power of n over n equals this equals this equals that equals this, and there's an approximation of the MRB constant. It's in Stephen Finch's Mathematical Constants, page 450. S also equals this, involving the kth derivative of eta of k, and this involving the kth derivative of etas of 0, where c sub k is this right here. So going back, let's try to cover a little more ground a little more efficiently from here on out. So here are some record computations. This first one is a little, how can I put it? Just something I obviously did. I don't remember the exact time, so I say on or about December 31st, I started playing with roots of numbers. And I wanted to find out what was the value of the sum of -1 to the power of n times n to the 1 over n. So I definitely remember putting 2 to the power of 1 over 2 minus 3 to the power of 1 over 3 and expanding that out. I also remember there was a time when I discovered the sum feature in my TI-92s. And if memory serves me right, the furthest I got was ending 1 to 1,000 in the approximate mode. I'm not sure what happens if you do it in the exact mode. I've got one of my TI-92s left, and I got a TI-89. I have to look at that again sometime and figure out what happens. It wasn't too long ago when I did the summing to 1,000, and I think it took a long time. I'm not sure if the last time I tried it, I waited patiently for the whole thing or not, but I'm sure I did it at least once in the past. And with my TI-92s, all I got was the first digit being 0, except when I use the sum feature. I believe when you go to 1,000, depending on how accurate the TI-92 is in that in approximate mode, you should get 2 decimal places, 0.10 and the 1. Um, and it'll be close to the 8 after 0.18. It'll be close to the 8. Anyway, speaking of real computers, we got number 2 here. On January the 11th, I computed 3 digits of the MRB constant with the inverse symbolic calculator. I recorded that in Math World. Not Math World. I recorded that in, what was that website? Dave's Math Tables. It's called math2.org now, but back then it was Dave's Math Tables. I'll look that post up sometime for you. In January of 1999, I computed 4 digits of the MRB constant with MathCAD 3.1 on a 50 megahertz computer operating on Windows 95. I went to a computer store. I don't think it was Best Buy. I think it was CompUSA. And I saw that they had some math software for sale, discounted. No one else wanted to buy it. It was an old version of MathCAD 3.1. So I bought it, and that was the best I could do. It was direct summing, so I took the I forget how MathCAD works, but you have these pictures of math, and you put everything together the way it would appear in a paper, and it does the computations of everything below what you have. And so I had it sum 1 to 10,000 or 100,000 or 1,000,000 on the formula for the MRB constant right here again. I had it do that, and I got 4 correct or consistent digits after going so far to, let's see, you get approximately n digits with 10 to the n iterations. So that would be 10, 100, 1,000, at least 10,000 iterations. And got 4 consistent digits. Afterwards, I had bought, this was some time afterwards, not necessarily in January, just mentioning the same type of software. I somehow found a deal on MathCAD 7 Professional. It wasn't thousands of dollars back then. It was only a couple of $100, or maybe $300. I don't remember exactly. And MathCAD 7 Professional. And somehow I was able to tweak it or to force it to give me 9 consistent digits, which confirmed to later computations. There was an online tool called Sigma from, I think it was a Japanese website. Forgive me if I'm wrong about that. I can't find either one, Sigma or that website anymore. But they might be They might be in there, just a different name or definitely a different address. It seems like. I computed. It had a way of using Paris to compute 500 digits of many sums, and the MRB constant sum was one of them. I didn't enter the formula exactly right, but I got the answer. It was negative of what I needed, but I understood that the digits were what I was after. Okay, in September of 1999, I had my own version of Paris and my 350 megahertz Pentium 2 with an impressive 64 megabytes of RAM. The computer I just sold, my record breaker of the MRB constant computer, had 64 gigabytes of RAM. Trying to save up for a better computer with 256 gigabytes of RAM. So we'll see. Actually, I'm got a, I don't know, kind of embarrassed to tell you about it, but you guys think I'm pretty efficient, but I got a GoFundMe page about it. I'm not going to tell you any links to it or anything here because that would be probably breaking some rules. But anyway, I computed 5,000 digits of the MRB constant with it. This was using Paris. Several of these next records are using Paris until I mentioned that I used Mathematica 5.2 on one of them. And then they're Mathematica 5.2 computations. And then I used Mathematica 6 and Mathematica 7 and Mathematica 8 as they grew to break records. My last record was broken with Mathematica 8. I was really impressed, starstruck by this record here. Finishing on December the 11th, 2012, Richard Crandall, an Apple scientist, computed over 1 million digits in a lightning fast 72, let's see if I can get the scroll, 76.4 hours. Probably processor time, but still that was impressive. The algorithm he used to compute the MRB constant had two timings with it, a T2 and a time that would display on the clock. And they, using most computers at that time, the display clock time, which was the actual time, was about twice as big, at least on my computers, it was about twice as big as the processor time. He started giving me a result or two and giving me a time on email, and later on said yes, it was that amount of time in processor time. And it makes sense with the computers of the day and the computer that he gave. He told me that he used a 2.93 gigahertz Neelam. That was processor time. It took me a long time to really judge that and be pretty certain he was talking about processor time. I finally beat that in 2018 with a couple of efforts. I actually beat it in actual time, so that'd be a doubling, up to doubling his accomplishment. But of course, that was because of DDR4 RAM, which is twice as fast as DDR3, and even more so nowadays. So here's some other records. Still working on 4 million digits. I mentioned it was my 6th try. I had a 7th try. Power outage, long-term power outage, shot that all to heck. Actually, I'm on an 8th try now. That's where these videos come in. So I give a picture of my mini clusters of computers. The one on the far left is the one I sold, the one I broke the records with, in hope of buying something better. So here we have some of Crandall's emails to me. You can read those at your leisure. And here's the Crandall edit formula. We'll talk about those in a minute. An algorithm for checking the MRB constant. I finally used that as one of these messages that I actually figured out a way, it seems to me, that actually checks the MRB constant computation. It a little more than doubles your time of computation, but that's fair for a checking method. Then I had speed records. These speed records are a little out of date. You'll have to go through the message to find more up-to-date speed records if you're really serious about breaking some records. But these are a good guide to see that you're computing it quickly, because these were impressive at their time. Um, Here's where I didn't understand one of Crandall's codes for checking he used for checking his computations. Later on, I understood it, and there's a message about it that refers back to it. Um, One of my early attempts from Tuesday, May the 22nd, 2018, I started a 5 million digit computation. That didn't last long. I gave up on it. Um, um, it would have took over 120 days. You can find out from my 5 million digits.nb. Um, Daniel wrote from research. There's a missing message here. I asked the moderators to clean up my message. I had a bunch of partial messages that I had put into other messages to streamline the um, the posting. The try to break these MRB constant records post, and one of them got lost somehow. Um, um, and he's there. I talked about in that missing message. I talked about summing the MRB constant through um, odd and even partial sums. Let's see here. This is back to the Math World website, and see the formula I have highlighted. Um, Summing all the even numbers to the power of 1 over the even number, the next odd number minus the next odd number to the power of 1 over the odd number, and doing that in a formula, sum of this. And I was impressed that I was able to get 170 some digits or so. And actually, I was impressed first with 77 digits, later 100 and some. And when I first remarked about being impressed about 77 digits, um, Daniel warned me that in sum could be used in the same formula for both. Although I disagree with him, it was a good observation. Astute. He's being astute, and I appreciate that. I don't know if I've convinced him otherwise or not. That's not my job. I could be wrong too. Um, I argued a little bit here how I know that the sum right here, the original way of summing it, was correct, and so the other one would be correct too. But that has nothing to do with whether Mathematica uses the same formula or not. So there's an approximation of the MRB constant. Um, so I used as a justification that the algorithm used by the MRB constant um, program, written by Cohen and a few other mathematicians, two others, um, was proven correct. He proves it correct in that paper. He proves his algorithm correct. And then there was this algorithm uses some what he called a negative d over s, uh, and these d's, the numerators, followed a certain pattern. And he mentioned that the first coefficient was 2, the next one had two coefficients, 16 and negative 8. Next one had three coefficients, 98, negative 80, 32, and so forth. And then they were over the s, a different uh, integer. And these were near integers, if I remember right, in the numerators. Um, I could be mistaken. But anyway, these coefficients of the numerators is patterned out, is drawn out here, And I noticed I could figure out the pattern for the ones on the right. They were the S's um, -1. And the ones on the far left, I forgot what they were, but it's not hard to figure out. They are compared to the. It gave you a preview of my progress on the MRB constant computation. I didn't want my connection to go sour. But anyway, these ones on the far left are somehow, if I remember right, connected to the ones on the far right. And I was wondering if anyone had a full pattern for the whole set of coefficients where I could use that pattern to compute the numerator needed, the D, was it S over D, one or the other. Anyway, the numerator of um, to compute the numerator of the um, um, expression that gives the MRB constant approximation to so many digits. I thought it'd be a nice shortcut, um, but actually, it's not that much of a shortcut anyway. Even if I had an instant algorithm to figure out all these coefficients quicker than the way he presented it, I would still have to figure out these a sub 0, a sub 1, a sub 2, a sub 3, which are several of the n to the 1 over n's, like the square root of 2, the cube root of 3, the fourth root of 4, the fifth root of 5. That is the big problem with computing many digits of the MRB constant. You still have to compute several of those. Richard Crandall's program that we've been using. Here's a picture of one of the early versions of it. I'll skip down here toward the bottom. Here's the version that I'm using now. It has a part where it computes the square root of 2, the cube root of 3, the fourth root of 4, and so forth. And it has Mathematica compute so many of the digits. And then it uses, this is Crandall's algorithm to compute the rest of the digits. Then I figured out a program to compute even more digits for larger computations, like in the millions. There's my phone, and I can't really get to it right now. I don't think you want to know my private business. So it'll stop here in a second. I figured out this program, this section here, to compute even more digits for larger computations and more digits than Crandall's does, faster. And so I'm really proud of that. And I used it several times here in my 4 million digit computation that we're doing right now. This was a 4 million before it that died in a long-term power outage. And here are these links to my progress. Well, I promised you in half an hour or so I'd get to my today's progress. Well, it's been half an hour or so, maybe even a little longer. Right at half an hour, I guess. So today's progress, if I find my connection to my Digital Storm PC, so it's going to stop at 5,308,416 iterations. The progress as of a few minutes ago before I started, or the progress now. I haven't magnified it yet, so I can use this one. Control or Alt plus from Mathematica. We're at 956,416 iterations. Go to my calculator, see if that's the one I calculated or not. I might have calculated the one before that, which had been a few minutes ago. I got it on my calculator. Uh, this was when it was 952. See, 952,320 iterations divided by the number of iterations it's going to have times 100% is 79. So it's basically 18% done now. So anyway, have a good day. Thank you again, all you Wolfram community visitors and all the other visitors. Please come back, invite your friends. I'll take all the visitors I can get. All the people that are learning about the MRB concept, they're learning a little bit of me. And that kind of spreads me around. Not spreads me thin, just spreads more of me around. There's plenty of me to go around. Um, Physically too. uh, so they go around, and it's kind of my idea of eternal life. If the MRB concept is remembered from generation to generation, I'll kind of live. At least my initials will, as long as it keeps that name, will live from all those generations. I really like that idea. That's one of my goals in life is to ensure that some of my discoveries, at least the MRB constant or something else, if that doesn't work out in the long run, will be remembered throughout history. So, goodbye.